Yeah.
So, okay. Hi everyone, I think we are online, at least we are recording the meeting. Yeah, so I see some participants online. Just wait 1 minute and we go. We have online Eric Gierski from the Global Compact HQ, and Susan is somewhere. Yeah, she's there. Sorry, the screen just moved, and she's in the blue zone, and she will be able to give some insight from the blue zone. So just take 1 minute to set up everyone, and we start. So yeah, no, let's go. So I'm Niels Pedersen, the head of Global Compact in France, and we're here in Nice for the All Weeks. And I am with my colleagues, Susan Johnson and Eric Gierski from the UN Global Compact, and especially from the Oceans team. And so we spend the whole week here in Nice, and we are happy to share the insights, the takeaways of the All Weeks, and also included the Blue Economic and Finance Forums. And I would like to start with Eric. And Eric, maybe you could, share the takeaways from this week.
Thank you so much, Niels, and thank you so much for all the hard work in making this a massive success. This was the third UN Ocean Conference and the largest one ever, and the highest level attendance that we've ever seen. Thanks to great leadership of Costa Rica and France, with President Macron really putting the nation behind it, preparing initially a Blue Economy and Finance Forum in Monaco on the Saturday and Sunday, where we saw attendance of 2,000 people from finance, bankers, insurers, but also ocean operators coming together to see how we can make sustainable ocean solutions investable and bankable. I found that extremely useful. And we had the Assistant Secretary General of the UN and CEO of Global Compact in New York, Sandra Giambo, attending one of the panels, and she also attended parts of UNOC. And her feedback to me was also that she was extremely impressed about the quality of the meetings, the inclusiveness. We had people from over 100 countries coming together, and we managed to really forward some really tangible projects and results. And for those of you who work in shipping, we know that we're just out of a very important IMO negotiation on the greenhouse gas emissions, and that was highlighted throughout the UNOC and the Blue Economy Finance Forum in a very productive way on how we can make it a just and equitable transition. I think for many reasons, we can see that multilateralism works, international cooperation works. It's important for private sector. We see the progress of the plastic treaty, of the BBNJ agreement, and also the deep interest in smarter financing of these projects, from blue bonds to ocean investment protocol, which Susanne will talk about, to systemic change like blue corridors and green corridors, etc. So we see a lot of progress, and it wouldn't have been, if not for the private sector, really ramping up their ambitions to be part of the solution. And I really have to commend UNGC France for convening so many people through their network in France. It's very important that the host country have lots of network members coming in, and that really put a mark on this event. So thank you, Niels. Great seeing you, so many of your companies there, and really looking forward to UNOC3, which will be in Korea in 3 years from now. And I have to run into a meeting with the ministry here, so apologies on that, but thank you so much again. Thank you.
It was short, but it was nice for an insight from Eric and Susan, because you have been working this conference for many months. So I would like to give you, Susan, the mic, and first to really share the insights from the last week, and then also to present the Ocean Investment Protocol that you have been working on, Susan, last week. Oh. No sound, sorry. So do it again. It was nice to have Eric and Susan. And Susan, you have been spending the whole weeks also here in Nice, and you have been working on the Ocean Investment Protocol. So I would like first to hear you about your insights from all the meetings you have been attending to in the Blue Zone, and then maybe you could share the Ocean Investment Protocol to the audience.
Well, thank you, Nils, and thank you so much for all the work that UN Global Compact has been doing in France. I mean, it's really quite incredible how you've mobilized, all of these, the private sector to come to fore, and been so responsible also for helping to create a statement by the private sector and for businesses and a call towards ocean action. And it's really been quite amazing here with I think 90, they talk about the delegations represented here. Over 90% of the economic zones off of nations are represented. So basically, it's the entire ocean in terms of national oceans that have been represented at this conference. And then, of course, the high seas, and I can talk about that in a little bit. But there were a number of goals for the ocean conference, and Eric talked about commented that multilateralism seems to work in the ocean right now in a way that it perhaps is. There's quite a bit of tensions, with a backdrop of quite a bit of tensions elsewhere in the world. Just in the past 2 years, we've seen a lot of growth in terms of countries, parties coming together for illegal fisheries, fighting plastic pollution, global shipping regulations, biodiversity in the ocean, and of course the High Seas Treaty, which is biodiversity within areas beyond national jurisdiction. And so we did come together to this conference with the hopes that there would be progress in those. And in fact, hearing, I think the press briefing is going on, but hearing now that for the High Seas Treaty, the BB&J, which was signed, just a year ago, after 20 years of negotiation, it's expected they have enough political agreement to do it now, and so the actual legal mechanisms are expected to come in by September. So this was a huge push to get 60 countries to ratify the BB&J agreement, and it seems as though this will happen and legally by September. So that's very exciting, because what this treaty will do is guard biodiversity in the areas 200 miles out off of the coasts of countries, and this has never been done before. So that's very exciting. And another area that we've seen a lot of work in is parties declaring protected areas, marine protected areas. So, we're seeing in the hundreds of thousands of kilometers being pledged by countries this week, including France, but including, of course, many small island developing states where their footprint, their actual terra footprint may be small, but their ocean footprint is enormous, and they're pledging to protect areas that are magnitudes larger than their actual terra footprint. So that's very exciting. We've seen more countries come in to help combat illegal fishing, and helping to deliver this, what they're calling 30 by 30 target, which is this marine protected areas. The one area that we need to see some real action on is ending single-use plastics. So there's going to be a lot of work in as we go forward in this next year to come to a legally binding global treaty to end plastic pollution. But I think there's, I wanted to talk a little bit about the arc of development of the Ocean Conference, this Ocean COP, let's call it. This is the third one in Nice. The first one was in 2017. And in that first one, I think it probably brought parties and partners together to create more of an awareness around ocean as a theme, and the plight of the ocean. The second one, which was in Lisbon, 3 years ago, that was really more about talking about a little bit more about what's the opportunity. So now that we're all together, what is the opportunity? The ocean is more than a victim. So there are many different areas, including the ocean economy, where we can combat change and take advantage of the opportunity of the ocean economy. And this one, going even further, consolidates more towards action, and it looks at a number of levers. One in particular was looking at how we can finance ocean action, how we can resource ocean action as a part of ocean industry, for example, but also in aid of conservation and preservation. And so this has been very tangible, action-oriented meeting. And we've seen a number of finance mechanisms come into play that look at unlocking billions, but even trillions towards the ocean economy. Today, this afternoon, we'll hear the final readout of the accomplishments at the Ocean Conference. So we don't have those yet. And I would encourage us, we'll put out a note with those final announcements and summary of the conference. But I think it's pretty much going to be summed up this afternoon in these final comments.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. And maybe you can give us a word about how the private sector can be engaged and committed to the oceans, and especially around the Ocean Investment Protocol. Can you give us a word about that?
Yes, thank you so much. So the Global Compact launched a number of initiatives this week, and one is the Ocean Investment Protocol. We launched it in conjunction with UNOC3, which is the finance branch of the environmental program of the United Nations. And it's in recognition, really, that enough funds aren't flowing from the private sector towards ocean solutions and towards the ocean economy. So there are many different initiatives out there that are focusing on ocean finance and getting public funds to bear, bringing public funds to bear, and some increasingly bringing private funds to bear. But typically these initiatives look on a sector or stakeholder by stakeholder basis. So they might look at finance institutions and what they can do, or industry and what they can do, or governments and what they can do. And what the Ocean Investment Protocol aims to do is bring together the top 5 to 10 recommendations for each of the major decision-making stakeholders in the ocean finance space. So these are governments, multilateral development banks, industry, finance institutions, and insurance. What are the top 5 to 10 recommendations for each of those stakeholders, such that almost it's a how-to guide, so that they can become increasingly aware of what their role is with regards to financing the ocean economy. And from there, move even deeper. Once you become aware, what can you do about it? The hope is this creates a connective web and an ecosystem to move forward with regards to unlocking private capital towards the ocean economy space. It's very much in recognition that one stakeholder alone doesn't have the remit to move the whole system forward. So it takes a collective approach. So it does encompass, we worked with all of those stakeholders, and it encompasses and identifies the major initiatives and agreements in the ocean economy space, and identifies which framework standards should we start to coalesce around and should we start to use. So we call it a how-to guide, and very much recommend taking a read of it. It's being championed by stakeholders across the piece, including European Investment Bank, I wanted to call out, and as well as Inter-American Development Bank, IDB Invest, in terms of helping to bring together their stakeholders so that they can contribute more to the ocean economy.
Susan, thank you so much. And as you are in the blue zone, in the heart of the negotiation, maybe you can share with us how the perception of the engagement of the private sector by the public sector, by the NGOs, how does the stakeholders react to this commitment by the private sector to the oceans? Did you heard some specific comments?
Well, I think the private sector is now seen very different than when the ocean conversations first started, as the great hope for the ocean economy. You know, just if we look at shipping, for example, and the transition to decarbonize what it's currently composed of 3% of the world's emissions. Without the private sector, without the shipping industry, without the ports that facilitate that, the landside infrastructure and the energy companies feeding in new fuels to decarbonize shipping, this simply can't be done. So I would say it is the major. I think it's now seen as the major lever in terms of achieving goals. Of course, it's understood that governments need to provide an enabling system and provide some clear direction for industry. But I think that the general tone is a recognition in a way it never has been before of private sector participation in the ocean economy. Sorry, I can't hear.
Sorry, thank you. Maybe I would like to invite the audience to share some questions on the chat so that maybe we can answer also to the question live. And while the audience is just thinking and writing the question on live, I would like to give the floor to Corentin Donne in my team in charge of the oceans. And Susan, you talk about multilateralism and, you know, international organization involved in the oceans. And we launched with the colleagues of Entreprise pour l'Environnement, ICC, WEF, and many other organizations, a call to action, a business call to action. And I would like to invite Corentin Donne to give a few words about this call to actions.
Yes, thank you, Niels. And yeah, thank you, Susan, for being there on this webinar. As some of you might know, we launched a business call at this UNOC event. As you stated, Niels, it was written by Entreprise pour l'Environnement in close collaboration with other business network, such as the World Economic Forum, ICC, and Business for Nature. For those who don't know, who have not been aware of this declaration, the goal of this declaration is to stress out the link between land and sea, and stress out the link, the dependence that we have to an healthy ocean for our livings. In the declaration, you will have some few words about that. So the carbon emission is like 30% absorption is in the ocean. It gives food to 3 billion people. It gives 80% of biodiversity on Earth is on. So just to stress out the importance of the ocean for our way of lives. On the other hand, we have huge pressure on the ocean, and it was like said during this UNOC conference numbers of times. 80% of pollution are coming from the land, 30% of fish stocks are overexploited, and 60% are the highest level of exploitation. So the pressure that the economic activity has on the ocean can't, you know, is not sustainable today. So this declaration is calling for two things. It urges businesses to act and think of solution to stop and limit our impact on the ocean. So assess our impacts, collaborate with science, think about circularity in our production systems, stop pollution, especially plastic pollution, which is 80% of pollution in the ocean. Urge for precautionary pause in activities. And so a call for businesses to act, and as well a call for policymakers to put in place strong and harmonious regulation. So you might have heard about the BBNG treaty, who has had a big step forward in this UNOC for like entering into force. The plastic treaty as well, the COP climate, and yeah, numbers of other treaties or like regulation, such as harmful subsidies on fisheries that are negotiated at the World Commercial Entity. So for now, like we have like more than 80 signatories on this call, with more than 50 companies coming from over 20 countries. And it was released at the Blue Economy and Business Forum on Sunday by Secretary of UNGC, who called it on the morning plenary on Sunday. It was stated as well by the President Macron in his speech, and it received a good audience in the press. So the first step is done. It was to have like a voice of the private sector calling for more sustainability in this ocean event. And as the next step, we will continue the call for action, gathering businesses that are ready to have a voice for more sustainability on the ocean, and think of way to enhance and highlight best practices. So we'll have this call coming from the next big international events in Geneva for the plastic treaty negotiation in August, and as well in the COP climate in Belém coming before the end of 2025. But yeah, and if you have more question, you can also sign and reach us to sign the declaration.
Thank you so much, Corentin. And obviously, we'll find all the details online on the website, and we will share in the chat. Maybe, Suzanne, I have a question, two more questions for you. I have the feeling that the private sector is asking for more public regulation. And maybe, how do you feel about this feeling? And also that I have the feeling that science is really back on the center of the stage. I heard many panelists calling for more science, more data, and that we really need to share and trust more the science to protect the oceans. How do you react?
Thank you, Nils. In terms of the private sector asking for more regulation, yes, I think we're in different times where it is very true. They see clearly how that can strengthen, particularly companies who are interested in acting in a positive manner. They would like regulation to reinforce their positive intentions and their ambitions. They would like to be, in a way, incentivized and see a clear path towards achieving their recognition or their ambitions. I'll go back to shipping again. Having a financial mechanism that has just been regulated by the IMO, which will fine polluters. So those international ships emitting GHG emissions, all international ships will, starting in 2027, will be paying funds into a pot. And then the amount that they pay will decrease over time as they shift and become less carbon intensive to zero carbon intensive. This type of regulation helps to bolster, for example, those shipping companies who want to take the lead in decarbonizing. But let's take another industry, offshore renewables, for example. Very much there's leaders in offshore renewable development that don't see their ambitions, their extra actions, for example, to develop in a nature positive way, in a way that's more harmonious with the ocean climate, the ocean environment around them. when they go to bid for licenses offshore from various countries, states, etc., they're not necessarily rewarded on top of price for those extra ambitions. So the view from many leaders is having regulation that incorporates bodies, nations' intentions to have a more climate and nature positive path forward. That provides the direction to companies, and companies in the end and markets in the end seek transparency, clarity, and visibility going forward, because within the ocean space, there's some very large infrastructure decisions that need to be taken for decades out. And without being able to predict a stable regulatory vision, whatever that is, the more extent that they're able to, companies are able to have stability in terms of making their large long-term CapEx plans, the more it benefits their ability to act in a forthright, positive manner. So yes, very much we're seeing an ask for regulation to support positive movers. And in terms of science, yes, that's been a third, just in the way finance was featured in a session before the Ocean Conference, so was science. And of course, this underpins everything. And what we're seeing here, though, is science is making an increasing link to science to data and usability, science to standards and engineering, science to business, science to funding. And so I think different from the last Ocean Conference, we're seeing science really connecting with the other segments of making an economy and a positive ocean move forward. Almost science is at the heart and the base, and the more we can have science-driven decisions around it, the better. But there are some very concerning developments in science coming out. Although there's some encouraging advances, there's also some puzzling questions that are coming out. For example, in spite of climate emissions reductions, GHG emissions reductions efforts, we continue to see an emissions level that has never been seen in the world before. And climate and scientists are starting to scratch their head why. They're wondering, and this is the most concerning part, they're wondering how meeting planetary boundaries is starting to have a overhuman action reaction. And so I think science has an extra important job to do, and a more complicated job to do in trying to give us direction and the facts for what happens in this state where we start to breach planetary boundaries. And that's certainly about ready to happen in the ocean, particularly with regards to ocean acidification and ocean warming.
Thank you, Susan. I really have the feeling that more than pledges or commitment, these last days have been a really call strong to action to any stakeholders. And I think it's quite a good news that all the 100 countries and the multiple NGOs have been able to talk together with the private sector to find any solutions to save the oceans. And also, as said by Eric and you earlier, multilateralism is still alive and credible. And I think it's also good news regarding all the news we are listening every day. And if we succeed to work together to save the oceans, it means that the global community will be able to save the planet and save the climate and save the planet. So for me, the last few days was huge good energy that we heard the same discussion every day, meaning that everyone is going in the same way, in the same goals towards the sustainable goals. And for me, it was a huge success, this conference here in UNOC. I don't see any question in the chat. So if you have any questions, you can, of course, connect to the Global Compact. And if you need to connect with Suzanne and Eric, we can, of course, connect you directly with the colleagues from HQ. And we will share all the details on the network, on social networks. And we already did, all of us. Sundown Jumbo also shared a lot of information online. So if I don't see any comment, and Suzanne had to join so many panels in the blue zone, maybe we should let you go. And thank you so much to all of you. It was really an incredible week here in Nice, incredible discussion with all the panelists. And I'm glad to see that the Global Compact and all the networks have been able to gather all the private sector. And we have been able to discuss with many different counterparts everywhere in the world here in Nice. So thank you to anyone, to everyone, and let's act for the oceans. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Tu arrêtes le truc.